This series contains themes of violence against women and child abuse. Listener discretion is advised. More than 40 years ago, two teenage girls disappeared from the beachside suburbs of southern Sydney. Elaine Johnson was 16, Kerry Ann Joel was 17. Gone without a trace. Never to be heard from again. For more than 4 decades, Elaine's family have searched in vain for answers. This is their story.
There's a hole in my heart the size of an island. Islands can be big and small. My love for you will never go away.
Today, I'm doing something a little different. I'm examining cold cases of other missing girls in Cronulla and some further afield. Cases with striking similarities to Elaine and Kerry that, like theirs, remain unsolved to this day. I chose to look into these cases for the same reasons Elaine's sisters know all about them. At first it was to see whether they could be linked, but even when it became clear that it's unlikely the same possible perpetrator could be behind the disappearances, there was still valuable information to be uncovered. The details of how missing persons reports were handled, how families were treated, and how early and ongoing investigations were carried out by police have the potential to shed light on what went wrong when Elaine and Kerry disappeared, and why, 45 years later, the people who love them still don't have answers. A culture of victim blaming and a pattern of inaction. Elaine and Kerry's disappearance wasn't the first to unsettle the Shire. More than a decade before they went missing, a grim discovery was made in the sand dunes not far from Cronulla Beach.
Here at Wanda Beach today, there is practically no trace of the tragedy which has shocked all of Sydney. Behind me, a short distance down the beach, a young man and his nephews yesterday stumbled upon the bodies of the 2 teenage girls from Ryde buried in a shallow grave.
It was a blustery day on January 11, 1965. Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sharrock giggled as they walked along the sands of Wanda Beach. The 15-year-old best friends, who lived next door to each other, caught the train from their homes in West Ryde in Sydney's northwest, down south for a beach picnic. 6 children headed off for a day of fun. Only 4 returned home.
Wanda was extraordinary. It's still one of the most significant unsolved crimes in Australia. It's still one of those deep mysteries.
That's Duncan McNabb. You met him in a previous episode. Duncan was a detective with New South Wales Police. He's now a successful crime author. He remembers what's still known as the Wanda Beach case well.
They go for a day at the beach, which they'd done before. Kids in those days do that sort of thing. They take the train from West Ryde all the way to Cronulla. They go for a walk on the beach, and then the 2 girls, Marianne and Christine, are last seen doing something unusual.
After seeking shelter from the wind for the young children, Marianne and Christine walked off towards the dunes. Wanda Beach is connected to Cronulla Beach by a seaside path.
They go for a short walk on their own. And I think from memory it was their youngest brother, Wolfgang, who sees the 2 girls with a blonde-haired surfy type boy. Right out of character for the girls, who are normally incredibly responsible. This is unusual. The girls don't come back. But the young kids, who are then 6, 7 and 8, walk back to the train station as it's getting close to dusk. They take the train back to West Ryde, where they raise the alarm. Cops do actually swing into action fairly quickly. The next day, a chap walking along with his nephews finds the 2 girls murdered in the sand dunes of Wanda.
The police investigation was one of the largest in Australia's history.
Yeah, it was an absolutely massive investigation. Investigation's like a jigsaw puzzle, a big jigsaw puzzle. You throw all the pieces on the table and then try and put them together. Wanda still remained for quite some time an unfinished jigsaw puzzle. People actually admitted to committing the crimes, which of course discarded. That happens occasionally. You've got to investigate and see whether or not they're telling lies or whether they've got mental health issues, which some of them did.
8 years after Marianne and Christine's murders, another teenage girl was found dead in the Shire. Jeanette Hannington, known as Jenny to the people who loved her, was last seen about 10:50 p.m. on Friday, the 28th of September, 1973, near Cronulla train station. The 13-year-old had climbed out of her bedroom window after pretending to go to bed at 9 p.m. Jenny's body was found the next morning on the side of the road in Grays Point, a suburb about 17 minutes' drive from Cronulla. Forensic tests would later reveal that she had been strangled and sexually assaulted. The pair of pink thongs she was wearing that night were missing. At the 1975 inquest into Jenny's murder, the coroner described her actions as foolhardy. In other words, the coroner said she was reckless for leaving her home that night. I'm mentioning Marianne, Christine and Jenny here because they share a sorrowful connection to Elaine and Kerry's case. Not only are all of their cases still unsolved, but their stories are forever tethered together, not through the hands of the same perpetrator or perpetrators, but because of the same widespread community attitude. It was an attitude of victim blaming, one that was rife at the time, even by today's standards. Women and young girls were expected to take care of themselves, and if they didn't, and something happened, well, that was on them. Law enforcement is made up of ordinary people. They are not immune to outdated or prejudicial beliefs. In Elaine and Kerry's case, police initially treated the girls as runaways, and as you've heard in a previous episode, Elaine's family believed their pleas for help to find her were all but dismissed. They believe they are not alone in this.
There's a case, Jessica Small, and they hung out at amusement centres, the two girls, and they got into a car.
That's Helen, Elaine's sister. She's talking about 15-year-old Jessica Small. Jessica was last seen in the early hours of Sunday, October 26, 1997. She had been hanging out at the Amuse Me amusement centre in Bathurst, which is a 3-hour drive from Cronulla. On the night she went missing, Jessica was with a female friend. They had hitchhiked home. The driver, a stranger, assaulted them. Here's Helen.
Jessica Small's friend jumped out of the car and she ran to that house. Yes. And Jessica Small was taken by this person when there was evidence that they were in a car and they did get assaulted and they did get taken, and they still treated them as runaways.
According to the findings in Jessica Small's 2014 coronial inquest, the then New South Wales Deputy Coroner, Magistrate Sharon Freund, determined, quote, assumptions and prejudices compromise the investigation, end quote. Freund went so far as to suggest the female friend's account, quote, was at the time dismissed by at least some police with derision and suspicion, end quote. It's these cases that stay with Helen, particularly because of how girls like Jessica's friend were treated. It begs the question, if victims were believed in the first place, could some cold cases have been solved? Could Elaine's?
I don't know everything about the case, but I thought to myself, well, they got treated for runaways for years and years, but two girls run away and both never been seen. Elaine didn't take anything with her. That's a bit unusual.
I want to talk now about another incident, one that happened only 7 months before Elaine and Kerry's disappearance, and not far from Cronulla. It was the 27th of July 1979 when 16-year-old Kay Doherty and 15-year-old Tony Kavanagh went missing. Kay and Tony lived in Warilla, a suburb on the outskirts of Wollongong, about an hour's drive south from Cronulla. There are elements of their case that bear similarities to Elaine and Kerry's disappearance.
Ultimately, what they did, they just become missing people.
That's Jeff Dakers, a retired New South Wales police officer. You've heard from him in previous episodes. He was one of the first officers on Kay and Tony's case.
I suppose there isn't all that much evidence under the fact that they were going to catch a bus into town, and that can happen so quickly and so easily.
What Jeff is talking about here is that both Kay and Tony were on their way to the city of Wollongong to a party. Back then, the party was called a disco. They went without telling anyone. Kay told her parents she was staying at Tony's house for the night, and Tony told her family she and Kay were going to the movies. Whether the girls ever made it to the disco that night is unknown. A friend of the girls remembers seeing them at a bus stop, but they didn't get on the bus. Their families received a letter from the pair a week later, saying they were in Sydney, but they were never seen or heard from again.
There is some pretty suspicious people out there, and the world isn't such a great place. There's a lot of evil that's going on that people are just oblivious to.
It's been more than 40 years since Tony and Kay went missing. During that time, Jeff left the police force, moved away from the Wollongong area and became a pastor. Yet in that time, he's never forgotten the case, and in some ways, it hasn't let him.
My wife and I, we got a job with the Department of Housing, doing housing inspections. And like there's 5,000 properties from Helensburgh down to Eden, and we're inspecting a whole bunch of different houses. And I ultimately ended up back into the Doherty household, because at that stage it belonged to the Department of Housing still. And I remember when I walked into the house, there's Kay Doherty's photo hanging on the wall. And I thought, oh, wow. Then I thought, I'd been in this house before.
Jeff spoke with Kay's mother. He didn't mention his connection to her missing daughter for fear of upsetting her. The case re-entered Jeff's life again about 10 years ago when he returned to Wollongong. Local police had asked him to come in and chat with them about certain details. The discussion led to a shocking discovery.
They didn't have any evidence. Apparently, the evidence that they had went missing or was filed someplace where they couldn't find it. So that's pretty ordinary.
It was just like Elaine and Kerry's case. Lots of misplaced files. Also, like Elaine and Kerry's case, this lack of evidence meant the officers had very little to go on in Tony and Kay's cold case.
The documents had gone missing. We had on that transition from a rural police station to Oak Flats Command. That was a whole new police station that was built. I don't know whether in the transition they went missing on that now. The evidence wasn't around, so I told them who had actually worked, who was detectives back in the day.
Kay and Tony's case re-entered Jeff's life for a third time a few years ago when he met a businessman from the Wollongong area. We'll call this man Liam.
Well, he said as a child he grew up along this stretch of road here in the Warilla called Windang Road, which a lot of people come down the coast will understand where Windang is.
Here's Jeff again.
His house was across the road from a short road that went down to the sand dunes. It wasn't a very well-used road.
The road, Baker's Lane, snaked down to a sewage depot known by locals as the Dunny Depot. These days, it's the location of a jobs and training company. Liam told Jeff that back in 1980, he rode around down near the sand dunes.
As a child, he used to ride, he said, I was a bit of a loner. I used to go down there a lot on my own. And he said, on one particular afternoon, he was down there, and he said a guy had two girls. He said he actually had his arm around them, and the girls were singing out, he's going to kill us, he's going to kill us. So he said, he was a bit of a smart kid. He's about 12, 13 years old. I said, run in different directions. You can't chase you both at once. These kids ultimately got away, the two girls, and went to a house where he actually knew the people who lived there because they're basically neighbours of his.
Not long after, Liam went back down Baker's Lane on his bike.
He was down there again on these tracks because through all these sand dunes, there was actually roads. There was bitumen roads down there, and people used to go down there on weekends. He was down there on this next occasion where he saw a guy come over the top of the sand dune with a shovel, and he had a ute reversed up onto the sand dune.
This is significant to Jeff because Liam claims to have seen the man with the shovel and ute around the same area Kay and Tony went missing. Liam also claimed he could identify the man.
And I said, oh, wow. All right, look, can you come around? Can you go to the police? Come with me. I know some coppers because I still go to the police reunions. I still have camaraderie with ex-police. And he said, no. He said, look, our family, we don't have that much faith or confidence in the police in general.
Jeff understood. Instead, he asked Liam over to his house to meet with a detective to give a statement. Liam told the detective the man he saw that day was Ivan Milat. Ivan Milat was Australia's worst serial killer. He was known as the backpacker murderer for the abduction and killing of 2 men and 5 women in New South Wales between 1989 and 1992 in the Belangolo State Forest. The forest is an hour's drive from Wollongong.
It wasn't until the Belangolo stuff came out and someone had done a documentary about Milat that when he saw him on TV, he said, that's the guy I seen down the beach that time. He identified him twice.
Liam also told Jeff he had seen a shed in the area of the sand dunes that was covered in what he believed was blood.
Well, I don't know whether the shed was locked or whatever. He's just a nosy kid. He's going down there, so I want to know what's in the shed, sort of thing, or whether, I don't know how many times he would have went in there as a kid. But that was his area, and kids are inquisitive. And this is one of the things that he did state, that this shed had blood all over the floor of it. So you can understand if it was effluent, because that was what they used to do down there, not blood.
Jeff asked Liam if he could narrow down the area where he saw the shed. Liam drew him a map. Jeff has taken all the information to New South Wales Police. After months of urging law enforcement to investigate further, Jeff says little has been done. Fueled by frustration, Jeff went public with the information on YouTube in August 2023. A man, who we'll call Chris, saw the video and tracked Jeff down.
He knocked on my door and he said, I'm the guy where those 2 girls you mentioned came to.
Chris told Jeff the 2 girls banged on his door asking for help. The girls had told him they had been picked up hitchhiking by a man who drove them down Baker's Lane, claiming it was a shortcut. Scared, the girls jumped out of the car while it was still moving, leaving their belongings behind.
They had all their stuff in his car because they were on their way down to a party down at Nowra, and him and his 2 mates stopped the car coming out.
Him, meaning Chris, and 2 of his friends, who were at his house at the time.
They cited what year model it was, and they also identified the driver as being Milat.
Chris told Jeff he had already spoken to police. They took his statement back in 2004. Jeff contacted the police again.
I got the statement of the second witness, and then I emailed it to the detectives. I said, well, this guy's rocked up, so what are we going to do now? Is there going to be some follow-up? Nothing. They haven't got back to me. They indicated at one stage, we don't know whether it's Indigenous heritage area, because there's a Aboriginal employment agencies basically right next door on the cleared land, but in front of the sand dune area, and they assumed it might be Aboriginal heritage.
Jeff has been to the Aboriginal Lands Council. The land isn't heritage listed, but labelled as Crown land, meaning it is owned and managed by the government on behalf of the public. Jeff is now at a loss at why police aren't investigating further. I mentioned earlier that Kay and Tony's case shared similarities to Elaine and Kerry's disappearance. What I meant was 2 girls vanishing without a trace, police files either going missing or being misplaced, and years spent waiting on police action. I wasn't suggesting Ivan Milat is connected to Elaine or Kerry's case. During the 1990s and years following, if someone went missing in Australia, it was likely Milat's name would come up.
I don't think Belangolo was Ivan Milat's first, and had he not been stopped, it wouldn't have been his last.
Here's Duncan again.
I think certainly digging back into Milat's past, I think Belangolo was what he was caught for, and I suspect there will be other cases beforehand. But a lot of people would like to blame Milat for pretty much everything, and I think in some respects he's become the usual suspect.
But even this carries risks.
But there are a whole range of disappearances for which he may well be a suspect, but he may also be others. It's a big mistake investigators make when they focus on what they want to be the outcome rather than let the evidence drive them. And that may be the case with Milat in a lot of these instances. Well, yes, he's obvious, but is the evidence taking you to it? And the answer is probably not yet, or no.
Ivan Milat died of cancer in late October 2019 in the Long Bay Correctional Complex commonly known as Long Bay, in Sydney, so can no longer answer questions about cases he may or may not have been responsible for. Despite overwhelming evidence, Malat always maintained his innocence. Even now, Malat's name continues to surface in new missing persons cases. As mentioned in an earlier episode, Malat was linked to the disappearance of 9 young women and 1 young man missing from the Greater Newcastle area in the 1970s and 1990s.
And the curious thing about Malat, and something that's not often talked about, is that there's a really good chance that Malat had an accomplice.
Here's Duncan again.
And that's where this gets even murkier. I remember talking to an old detective mate who was on the task force years ago, and she made a very sensible observation along the lines of, I don't know why you blokes think he had an accomplice who was a bloke. Have you thought his accomplice might have been a woman?
Sadly, even if police have a suspect, there's no guarantee of justice. In the Wanda Beach murders, for example, there is a prime suspect, a man named Christopher Wilder. Wilder was an Australian-American millionaire businessman and amateur photographer. He was also a convicted serial murderer. Wilder was born in Sydney but moved to the United States as a young adult. In 1984, he abducted at least 12 young women and girls, killing 8 of them during a 6-week cross-country crime spree. The crimes earned him the nickname the Beauty Queen Killer and a spot on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Duncan has written extensively about Wilder and his alleged crimes. He believes New South Wales Police once had their man and let him go.
But the curiosity is that I think the gentleman who is now the prime suspect, one Christopher Wilder, was interviewed and discarded fairly early on. But that's, unless you've got more evidence, you can't really go progress some investigations. Why they discarded Wilder early on is beyond me. We just don't know. And the police were reticent to share the records. I only found out through a polite old source. There was a crime reporter who'd actually written about it and made some notes. Wilder also was nominated as a suspect in 1969 by his ex-wife and her sister and her mother, yet the New South Wales Police Force completely failed to act on that. It's a major stuff-up.
We reached out to New South Wales Police for comment on these claims. I'm yet to hear back. Wilder died in a shootout with US police in April 1984, so could not be re-questioned about the crimes. Though, that may not have mattered.
Whether he is or whether he isn't, we'll never know, because the semen sample, which is the absolute most significant piece of evidence that was maintained from the crime scenes at Wanda Beach, has been lost in the government analytical laboratories. Cops have been searching for it, but it looks as though the lab has misplaced it.
The crucial evidence had been safeguarded for decades.
The original cops had done a great job. They'd actually preserved this one slide and been sitting there for 40 or 50 years, and all of a sudden up comes DNA, and off we go. But unfortunately, we didn't. New South Wales was extraordinarily slow to accept DNA as a scientific tool. We were incredibly behind the rest of the world. But, finally we're catching up slowly, but sadly the slide is missing, so we'll never really know, because we have Wilder's DNA. It's not a stuff-up by the police, by the way. It's a stuff-up by the laboratory that they use, which I think is the government-run laboratory. I know the copper who tried to review the case, which was 15 years ago, and he was tearing his hair out as they literally went through thousands and thousands of boxes of old exhibits to try and find one, but it's not there.
Whether these structural failings are what stood between families, like Elaine's, and answers, that's something we'll never know. But thanks to the tireless advocacy of loved ones like Helen and Wendy and Joe, there's awareness of the emotional toll families of missing persons are forced to carry. Next week, on Out from the Cold, searching for Elaine.
We got a phone call saying that the detectives wanted to come to my mum and dad's place because they wanted to update the database on Elaine's profile. I went, oh, that's funny. I'm like, update the database? What can be different? When you go missing when you're 15 or 16 and you got blue eyes and blonde hair, your eyes are still blue and your hair's still blonde.
Searching for Elaine is a series from Out from the Cold, part of Happy Tuesday Productions. A special thanks to Helen and Wendy and the extended Johnson Cooper family for their time and trust. Thanks also to the Joel family, Elaine and Kerry's friends, and anyone who helped with information about the girls. It all counts. If you have information about Elaine Johnson or Kerry Ann Joel, you can get in touch at Help Find Elaine Johnson on social media or contact Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000. This episode was produced by me, Kate Cartshaw, and Sally Spicer. Editing by Dan McHugh and Matt Haywood. Artwork by Nick Watts.
There's a hole in my heart the size of an island. There's a hole in my heart the size of an island. Islands can be big and small. My love for you will never go away. My love for you will never go